Winning the lottery is supposed to be a dream come true, a fresh start, a way out. But for one man, it became a nightmare. Money has a way of magnifying who you really are, your fears, your secrets, and the things you think you've escaped. But no amount of money can protect you from what hunts in the dark. Tonight's story is about isolation, about temptation, and about a walking nightmare that doesn't care how rich you are. Before we begin, take a second to support the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a new nightmare. It's the best way to help Obsidian Quilt Publishing continue bringing you original horror. And if you're hungry for more terror, my new novel Blood in Brooklyn is on sale now, along with The Hunt for Dogman, Kubwa, and Creepy Cryptid Tales. All links are in the bio. Now turn down the lights. Get comfortable. This is Lottery Winner. $14, $25, $30, $41, $52, and $7. I stared at the numbers rolling across my small color TV, the kind with rabbit ears I just finished adjusting to clear the static. For a second, my brain refused to catch up. Then my jaw dropped. I jumped to my feet so fast I knocked over the cardboard box of Church's chicken sitting on the folding tray I used as a table. A greasy thigh slid across the stained apartment floor. "Damn it," I muttered. But I didn't bend down right away, because those were my numbers. I'd won. After years of factory work, after losing my business, after my marriage collapsed and left me hollowed out, I finally won. April 12th, 1985. That was the day my life changed. Or maybe the day it ended. A month later, I stood in downtown Atlanta in front of the Georgia Lottery Commissioner. Driver's license in one hand, signed ticket in the other. They smiled, shook my hand, and slid a giant novelty check across the desk. $10 million. The jackpot had been higher, but I took the lump sum. Taxes are taxes. 10 million was enough. I didn't celebrate. I stayed quiet. Didn't tell my ex-wife. Didn't tell the guys at work. Didn't tell anyone. Silence felt safer than joy. The next morning, I punched in at the factory like nothing had changed. Nobody looked at me twice. That afternoon, I walked into a law office and asked to hire an attorney. Naturally, they asked for a retainer. The attorney looked annoyed until I slid my signed ticket across her desk. Her eyes widened. That was the moment I stopped thinking like a broke man. The following day, I was at the Lottery Commission office. I posed for photos, shook hands, then walked out the back of the building, climbed into my rusted two-tone pickup, and vanished. No forwarding address, no phone, no trail. I moved north, to Pike County, Pennsylvania, near the Poconos. I bought a 150-acre farm built in the 1930s. Old stone foundation, thick beams. I modernized what mattered. Raised horses, sheep, chickens, planted corn, bought 4 head of cattle. Within a year, the farm ran perfectly. Too perfectly. The land was cheap. Suspiciously cheap. When I asked why, everyone gave the same answer. The last owner was motivated to sell. I rode the property daily on my Appaloosa duck. He was steady, smart, until we reached the tree line. There were places where Duck would stop cold. Ears forward, muscles locked, refusing to go any farther. The woods looked normal, but they felt like they were waiting. So I built a fence, 500 yards from the trees. Tall, barbed wire, a clear boundary. That's your side. This is mine. The work crew wouldn't stay past sunset. One suggested an electric fence. I ignored him. That was my mistake. By September, the new sheriff came out. Her name was Marisol Vargas. New to the county. New to the land. Just like me. We rode the property together. Duck stayed calm near the fence. That terrified me. Then the air changed. Not gradually, instantly. It turned coppery and foul, like blood mixed with feces, wet dog, and freshly turned to earth. The smell coated my tongue and crawled down my throat, thick enough to taste. Duck stopped dead. Not slowed. Stopped. Across the fence, no more than 20 yards away, something moved. At first, it looked like a wolf. Long, pointed ears. Black, matted fur that caught the morning sunlight as it stepped out of the shadows. Its body stayed low to the ground, shoulders rolling beneath the fur, stalking with practiced patience. Its tail flicked once to the side, then dropped straight behind it like it was ready to spring. For half a second, my mind tried to accept that explanation. Then it reached forward. Not with a paw, with an arm. Long. Muscular. Like a weightlifter's arm stretched too far, joints bending in ways they shouldn't. What ended it wasn't a paw, either. It was a 5-fingered hand. Clawed. The fingers dug into the dirt, black nails biting deep as it pulled its body forward. My stomach dropped. The woods went silent. Dead silent. No birds. No insects. No wind in the leaves. The only sound was a lone woodpecker hammering rapidly against a tree somewhere behind us. Its frantic tapping magnified by the unnatural stillness, like it hadn't gotten the message yet. The creature crept closer to the fence. Then it reached out with its other hand and wrapped its fingers around the wire. Metal groaned. Slowly, deliberately, it began to pull itself upright. We heard it then. A sickening crack. Then another, and another. Bones popping and shifting as if the thing were reassembling itself mid-movement. Its spine straightened with a wet, grinding sound as it rose onto its hind legs. It stood there, 8 feet tall, hunched forward, shoulders and neck crowned with a thick black mane. Its mouth hung open slightly, rows of fangs slick with saliva that dripped onto the dirt below. When it lifted its head, its yellow eyes burned. Our horses screamed. Duck reared so violently I nearly lost the saddle. Sheriff Vargas's horse did the same. Somehow, pure instinct, we stayed on as they bolted into a full gallop away from the fence. Or so we thought. As Duck thundered down the path, I risked a glance back. It was running alongside us. On the other side of the fence, keeping pace without effort. Its head was turned, eyes locked on us, not even looking where it was going. Long arms swung at its sides, sometimes dropping low enough to brush the ground, using its knuckles to propel itself forward like a gorilla, then lifting back onto its hind legs without breaking stride. Then it surged, blew past us, upright, so fast the air itself seemed to recoil. And just like that, it veered and crashed into the trees. Gone. The terror didn't leave when it disappeared. That was when it truly set in. Back at the house, Sheriff Vargas finally told me why she'd known what it was the moment she saw it. She was 3 years old when a pack of them attacked her family while crossing the border. 8-foot creatures. Moving on 2 legs and 4. Coordinated. Methodical. Her grandfather turned back so they could escape. She still hears his screams. "These things migrate," she said quietly. "That's why the land was cheap." That night, I didn't sleep. I turned on every light in the house and sat in the living room with my rifle across my lap, listening to the house settle, every creak sounding like footsteps. Just before dawn, something hit the house. A heavy, meaty thud that shook the siding. I waited, counted my breaths, then moved outside. A sheep lay crumpled against the wall, bloody, ripped apart. Its body twisted wrong, wool soaked dark. It hadn't died there. It had been thrown. I searched for tracks near the house. Nothing. 10 feet out. 15. 20. Then, 25 feet from the wall, I found the prints. Deep. Massive. That's where it had stood. That's where it had picked up a 100-pound sheep and hurled it at my home. And then I saw the pasture. 7 more carcasses. Scattered. Torn open. Necks snapped. Chests split wide. Organs dragged out and left like discarded meat. Organs dragged out and strewn across the field. This wasn't feeding. This was a message. I called Vargas. She arrived within minutes. She didn't ask if it was an animal. She already knew. We drove straight to the fence, or what was left of it. The posts were snapped. The wire ripped down and twisted like it had been peeled apart by hand. And there, moving through the opening, were prints. Large canine paw prints. Too big, too deep, too many. They led straight into my land. Vargas stared at them for a long time. Then she said quietly, "It's the same as the other farms." She didn't need to finish the sentence. I looked out across my fields, my animals, my house. The life I had tried to build, the quiet, the land, the illusion of safety, was already coming apart. That morning made it clear. Whatever lived in those woods wasn't just passing through. It was laying claim. That was the day I decided I wasn't running, that I wasn't selling, wasn't packing up what was left of my life and disappearing again. That day, I declared war. Sheriff Vargas tried to stop me. She said it carefully, calmly, the way someone does when they already know they're too late. She talked about procedure, about calling in state wildlife, about backup that would never come in time, or never come at all. But I'd come too far. I told her I wasn't letting it drive me off my land the way it had driven the last owner away, the way it had driven her family into the dark. She looked at me for a long moment. I saw the struggle in her eyes, the badge, the oath, the child she used to be. Then she nodded. "If you're going to do this," she said quietly, "you won't do it alone." She told me it wasn't just for me. It was for her grandfather. Her voice didn't shake when she said his name, but her hands tightened around the edge of the table. She suggested something that felt wrong the moment she said it. "We leave the fence down. No repairs, no barriers, no illusion of control. That way," she said, "we know where it comes in and where it leaves." She leaned closer, lowering her voice like the woods might be listening. "Predators follow habits, routes. If it thinks the land is open again, it'll use the same path." I looked out toward the broken posts and twisted wire, toward the dark line where the trees began. "And once we know that," she continued, "we figure out how to make it come when we want it to. We bait it." The words settled between us like a loaded weapon. I realized then there was no going back. The lottery had bought me land. But this decision? This was going to cost me everything else. We chose the lower pasture near the broken fence. Not because it was convenient, but because it felt wrong standing there. The land dipped gently toward the tree line. The grass flattened in places where something heavy had crossed before. Vargas said, predators favored places like this. Ground that offered confidence, control. We chose one sheep, big, healthy, loud. I hated that part more than I expected. We anchored it to the ground with a steel stake buried deep beneath the soil. Enough slack for it to move, but not enough to escape. Vargas worked the blood from the previous kills into its fleece with gloved hands, rubbing it in until the smell clung thick and sour. Copper. Rot. wet fur. The wind was perfect, blowing straight from the pasture into the woods. We retreated to the blind overlooking the creek bed. Logs stacked and packed with dirt, brush woven tight. From the outside, it disappeared into the land. From inside, it felt like a coffin. We waited in the pre-dawn mist, where the night lingered like a wound that refused to close. Fog smothered the fields, thick and low, clinging to the ground as if it didn't want to let anything go. It wrapped around the fence posts, the tall grass, our legs, cold, damp, and suffocating. The world beyond 20 yards simply ceased to exist. The sky was wrong, not black, not blue, just a dead, colorless gray that offered no promise of morning. No birds, no insects, not even the wind dared to move. The silence wasn't empty, it was loaded, pressing in on us, tightening with every breath we took, as if the land itself was holding still so something else could move freely. I could hear my own heartbeat, slow and heavy, like a countdown I hadn't agreed to start. The air smelled damp and rotten, old leaves, wet soil, and something underneath it all that made the back of my throat burn. The sheep bleated softly at first, confused, nervous. As the first thin blade of sunlight split the darkness, it didn't bring warmth, only clarity. The bleating started then, sharp, desperate, wrong. It cut through the fog like a scream, carrying far too well across the open pasture, echoing in a way sound shouldn't. Each cry lingered, stretching, bouncing off the tree line and coming back warped, closer than it should have been. The wood stayed eerily silent, too silent. Then the air shifted. The smell hit first, heavy and foul, like blood and animal waste mixed with damp earth. Varga stiffened beside me. Her hand rose slowly, signaling me to stay still. It was coming. The sheep froze mid-cry. Branches didn't snap. Leaves didn't rustle. The creature parted the woods. It stepped out on all fours, low and deliberate, its bulk impossible to miss, even in the failing light. This wasn't fast. It wasn't cautious. It was certain. Black fur hung from its frame in thick, matted clumps, clotted with old blood and dirt like it had never been clean, like it couldn't be. Each step it took made its shoulders roll beneath that pelt, massive muscles shifting under the skin like coiled steel cables, being drawn tight and released. The ground seemed to recognize its weight, settling beneath it with soft, ominous thuds. Its yellow eyes never blinked. They stayed locked on the sheep with an intensity that made my stomach knot. Not hunger, not excitement, but ownership. The way a thing looks at something it has already decided belongs to it. Then it rose. Not quickly, not suddenly. It unfolded itself unnaturally, inhumanly. Its spine straightened with a slow, deliberate motion, bones grinding and popping as if rearranging themselves into a shape never meant to stand upright. When it reached its full height, the air seemed to compress around it. 8 feet tall. A towering mass of muscle and fury, claws curved and thick, fangs glistening behind lips pulled back in something that wasn't quite a snarl. Black, matted fur draped over it like a funeral shroud, broken only by the shine of saliva dripping from its mouth onto the dirt below. Its arms were grotesquely muscular, too long, too powerful, ending in hands that looked capable of crushing bone without effort. It balanced effortlessly on hocked legs, posture steady and confident, like gravity itself bent around it. This wasn't an animal. This was a rejected design of nature or the next evolution in predators. Heavy, built with a single, unmistakable purpose: to dominate, to kill, to erase anything smaller than itself. Standing there in the fading light, It didn't feel like something that lived in the woods. It felt like something the woods had grown and unleashed. A nightmarish embodiment of death. Not sudden death, not merciful death, but the kind that watches first, the kind that decides how long you're allowed to scream. The sheep screamed. The creature lunged. It hit with terrifying force, jaws tearing into flesh, but the anchor held. The sudden resistance confused it for half a second. That was all we needed. Vargas triggered the snare. Steel cable snapped tight around its leg. The roar that followed wasn't pain. It was fury. The creature thrashed, muscles bunching, nearly ripping the anchor free. I fired. Once, twice, rounds slamming into its shoulder and side. Blood sprayed dark and thick across the dirt. It turned toward the blind, saw us, and charged, dragging the snare, tearing up the earth as it came straight for us. The ground shook under its weight. Vargas slammed the deadfall trigger. The log dropped. Bone cracked. The dogman screamed, high, raw, almost human. Still, it tried to rise. I stepped out of the blind. My hands were shaking so hard I could feel it in my jaw. Up close, the smell was unbearable. Blood, waste, hot breath. Its eyes locked onto mine, burning with hatred and understanding. It knew exactly what I was. I raised the rifle, pulled the trigger. The shot thundered across the pasture. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the front sight in the slow rise and fall of my breath. The creature stood there, framed by the fence and the dying light, its chest heaving, yellow eyes locked on us with naked hatred. I squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked like thunder. The sound ripped across the pasture, echoing off the hills, scattering birds from the trees. Almost instantly, Marisol fired. One shot, then another. Her movements sharp and practiced. The round struck home. The creature staggered. Then it collapsed. Its massive body hit the ground with a wet, final thud that seemed to shake the earth beneath our boots. The fence rattled. The grass flattened beneath its weight. And then, nothing. No movement. No breath. Only silence. We stood frozen, weapons trained on it, afraid to blink. Seconds dragged into eternity. The world felt hollow, like it was holding its breath with us. Slowly, too slowly, we advanced. Each step felt wrong, like crossing an invisible line. I reached out and nudged the creature with the muzzle of my rifle. Its flesh yielded under the pressure. Dead. The smell came next. It rolled over us in a thick, choking wave. Rotting meat, coppery blood, wet fur left too long in the rain. It filled our noses, our mouths, our lungs. I gagged, swallowing bile, tasting decay on my tongue. "We did it," Marisol whispered. Her voice sounded distant, fragile. She sagged slightly, as if the strength holding her upright had finally given out. For a fleeting moment, just a second, I saw something soften in her face. Relief. Peace. Like a child finally waking from a lifelong nightmare. Then the woods screamed. A roar exploded from the tree line. Deep, furious, layered with something horribly wrong. It wasn't the sound of a single throat. It was too wide, too full. Another answered it, then another, then another. 6 roars in total. Each one coming from a different direction, overlapping, circling us. The sound rolled through the forest, vibrating in my bones, rattling my teeth. Movement flickered between the trees. Shadows detached themselves from darkness. Tall silhouettes, broad shoulders, glowing eyes igniting one by one like dying stars coming back to life. The smell intensified. The air felt heavier, thicker, like the forest itself had leaned in closer. Marisol's face drained of color. Her eyes went wide, pupils blown with pure terror. "No," she whispered. No, no, no. My stomach dropped. This wasn't an ending. It was an answer. There's more of them, I said, my voice barely more than breath. The truth hit me with crushing clarity. We hadn't killed the monster. We'd killed one of them. They're surrounding us, I said, grabbing Marisol's arm, pulling her to run as the shadows shifted closer. We reached the horses just in time. Duck was already dancing, eyes rolling white, nostrils flaring as if he knew, as if he'd known all along. I swung into the saddle, hands shaking as I hauled myself up, while Marisol mounted in one smooth, desperate motion. There was no time to look back. I did anyway. The creatures had gathered around the fallen body. 6 towering shapes loomed over the carcass of their dead pack member, black fur rippling as they bent close. One lowered its head and let out a long, broken howl, not just anger, but something rawer. Grief, fury, loss. Then they lifted their heads together and looked straight at us. The howls that followed ripped through the air, layered, overlapping, a chorus of rage and pain that made Duck scream beneath me. The sound wasn't meant to warn us. It was meant to promise something. They broke into motion. The ground shook as they charged, bodies exploding forward on powerful hind legs, arms swinging low and long, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Grass flattened beneath them. Fence posts blurred past as they poured out of the tree line like living wraiths of death. Go! I shouted. Duck surged into a full gallop, muscles bunching beneath me, hooves pounding the earth so hard it felt like he might tear himself apart. Marisol was ahead of us, her horse stretched out flat, mane flying as if the wind itself were trying to drag her forward. But the gap behind us was shrinking. They were gaining. I risked another glance back and felt my blood turn cold. Yellow eyes locked onto us, jaws open, breath steaming, bodies moving with horrifying coordination. They weren't just chasing, they were hunting. I fired the rifle into the air. The crack split the sky, echoing off the hills like artillery. For a heartbeat, the creatures hesitated, snapping their heads up, snarling, momentarily unsure. It bought us seconds. Only seconds. Then they roared again and surged faster, claws tearing up dirt as the chase resumed. Closer now, angrier now. Marisol did the unthinkable. As Duck thundered beneath me and the pack closed in, I saw her reach inside her blouse. Not fumbling, not panicking. Focused, resolved. She pulled out a grenade. For a split second, my mind refused to accept it. This wasn't a battlefield. This was my pasture, my land. She twisted in the saddle, reins clenched in one hand, the grenade in the other. Without slowing, she yanked the pin free with her teeth and hurled it backward into the charging mass. "Hold on!" she screamed. The explosion tore through the field like the wrath of God. Fire and dirt erupted into the air, the shockwave slamming into us hard enough to rattle my teeth. Duck screamed and nearly stumbled, but kept running. The blast drowned out everything. Hooves, howls, even my own thoughts. I dared to look back. It hadn't killed them. The pack scattered, bodies thrown in every direction. One lay twisted and unmoving. Another staggered upright, half its face torn away, blood pouring down its chest. 2 more limped back toward the tree line, snarling, wounded but very much alive. The rest stood their ground, burned, bleeding, furious. They watched us go, not in retreat, not in fear, but with something colder. We didn't wait to see what they would do next. The house came into view just as my lungs felt like they might burst. We tore into the yard, leapt from the saddles, and dragged ourselves and the horses into the stable. I slammed the heavy doors shut and dropped the iron bar into place just as something massive hit the wood from the outside. The impact slammed into the barn like a freight train. The sound so violent it felt like it passed straight through my chest. Beams shuddered. Nails screamed. Dust poured down in choking sheets from the rafters, stinging our eyes and coating our tongues with the taste of rot and old hay. The walls were closing in. We were trapped in a box of splintering wood and screaming animals, the morning light barely filtering through the cracks like it was afraid to come inside. Marisol and I pressed ourselves flat against the stall walls, rifles raised but useless, our hands shaking so badly I could hear the metal clicking against the wood. Then came the breathing. Not one set, several. Deep, wet, labored breaths, injured but furious, circling us. Claws dragged slowly along the outside boards, not scratching in panic, but probing, feeling for weakness. A heavy body leaned against the wall, the wood bowing inward an inch. Then another blow from a different direction. They were wounded, and that made them worse. That. The horses went mad. They reared and slammed into their stalls, hooves pounding, eyes rolled white with terror. One screamed, a raw, broken sound that cut through the barn and made my stomach knot. Their panic fed the things outside. I could feel it. Every kick, every whinny was blood in the water. Marisol and I moved in frantic, tight circles, shouting, grabbing halters, trying to calm animals that knew we were already surrounded. Every time I passed a wall, I could feel heat through the boards, smell them, hear jaws snapping inches from my face. The barn felt impossibly small now. Too many sounds, too little air. Claws scraped along the roof. Something heavy climbed, boards creaking above us. Another slammed into the far wall, testing it harder this time. The structure groaned, crying out like it was begging to be spared. They weren't attacking yet. We were hemmed in. Outside the creaking wooden doors were wounded apex predators, angry, patient, and smart. And in that suffocating stable, with the walls breathing and the floor shaking beneath our feet, I realized the truth. They didn't need to break in all at once. They only needed one opening, and then it happened. The wall near Duck gave way. Wood buckled inward with a tortured crack, boards exploding into splinters as clawed hands punched through, black and wet and frantic. Too many to count. They grabbed at my horse, raking into his flank, his neck, tearing, not pulling yet, just hurting him enough to break him. Duck screamed, a sound I will never forget. He reared and kicked, slamming hooves into the broken wall, fighting like he understood exactly what was happening. I brought the rifle up on instinct and fired point blank into the writhing mass of claws and fur, the blast deafening inside the barn. I fired again, and again. Wood, blood, and fur exploded outward. For a heartbeat, just one, I thought I'd bought him a chance. I was wrong. The claws tightened. Duck was yanked forward so hard his hooves left the ground. He slammed into the opening, his body wedged for half a second, eyes wide, terror locked on me like he was begging. Then he was gone, dragged screaming into the morning-lit fields and trees beyond the barn. The sounds that followed, God help me, the sounds. Wet, tearing sounds, bones snapping, growls layered over one another, excited, frantic, feeding. Duck's screams broke apart, thinning into choking gasps before disappearing entirely. The sounds went on far too long. The air was thick with the smell of blood I could taste it copper. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely keep the rifle shouldered. Then it stepped into the opening. One of them. It stood upright in the shattered wall, framed by broken beams and drifting dust. 8 feet tall. Massive. Its chest rose and fell in heavy, deliberate breaths, each exhale fogging the cold air. Blood streaked its fur. Strips of flesh clung to its claws. It wasn't rushing us. It was studying us. Its yellow eyes burned with intelligence. Cold, furious, patient. The corners of its mouth pulled back slightly, not quite a snarl, more like a promise. Its claws flexed slowly, deliberately, scraping wood as if it enjoyed the sound. The barn felt impossibly small. Marisol and I raised our rifles together, backs pressed to the stall walls, trapped between panicking horses and that thing staring us down. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I could feel its gaze on my skin, weighing distance, timing, deciding. For a long, awful second, I was sure it was going to come through. Then, faint, distant, sirens. The creature's ears twitched. Its head tilted, listening. The sound grew louder, multiplied. Engines, radios, urgency cutting through the morning. The thing hissed, low and furious. Behind it, shadows moved. Others from the pack, bloodied, limping, still lethal. One by one they turned away, melting back toward the fence and the tree line. The creature lingered a moment longer, eyes never leaving us. Then it turned and vanished. Marisol sagged against the wall, breath shuddering out of her. "Just in time," she whispered. Boots thundered outside. Voices shouted. Rifles cracked as deputies fired uselessly into the retreating woods. But the pack was gone, and Duck was dead. I found out Marisol had prepared for this. Before she ever came out to the farm, she told her deputies one thing. "If you don't hear from me by sunup, come loaded for a war." They did. 9 of them arrived just after sunrise. Weapons slung, faces grim. No jokes. No casual greetings. These were men who had already decided they were walking into something bad and were hoping, quietly, that they were wrong. We led them first to the side of the barn. Duck lay where the pack had left him. What was left, anyway. His body was torn open, split nearly in half like something had pried him apart. One flank was missing entirely. Ribs jutted out at impossible angles, snapped and crushed. The inside of him was exposed, dark, wet, ruined. Blood soaked the straw beneath him and crept toward the door in thick, sticky trails. Half of his neck was gone. The smell hit them hard. One deputy gagged and turned away. Another whispered a prayer. No one touched the body. No one needed to. The damage spoke for itself. "This wasn't feeding," one of them said quietly. "This was rage." From there, we walked toward the broken fence. Every step felt heavier than the last. The posts were snapped like kindling. Barbed wire was twisted and peeled back, stretched and torn as if by hands, not tools, not machinery. Paw prints the size of dinner plates sank deep into the mud on both sides of the opening. And just beyond it, the body. The dogman lay where it had fallen, massive even in death. 8 feet of muscle and fur sprawled across the grass. Its chest was blown open from the gunfire. Dark blood caked into its black pelt. One arm was bent the wrong way. Its claws were thick as knives, still curled like they were trying to grab something. Its face had frozen in a snarl. Yellow eyes dulled, but still wrong to look at. The deputies stopped cold. No one spoke for a long moment. Then one of them broke the silence. "Those are walking wolves," he said. Not surprised, not uncertain, just tired. "I was hoping I'd never have to see one up close." Another nodded slowly. "That pack's been reported for over 100 years. Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania. Same routes, same kills, Same disappearances. They migrate, a third added. Always have. The first deputy finally looked at me. If you'd never touched one, he said, I'd tell you to stay inside, keep your head down and let them pass through. He glanced back at the dead creature. But you killed one. His expression hardened. That changes everything. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You need to leave this farm, he said. Now. Today, if you can. Because they don't forget. And they damn sure don't forgive. He looked back toward the tree line, where the mist still clung low and unmoving. A howl tore out of the tree line just as the sun began to reveal more in the morning light. That time between 6 o'clock and 6:30 a.m., when the world is supposed to be quiet. We turned as one, weapons coming up on instinct, and then they stepped out of the trees. 6 of them. Black fur slick with dew, yellow eyes burning in the half-light, steam rolling from their open jaws as they roared. They didn't stalk. They didn't hesitate. They charged. We opened fire. The field exploded in muzzle flashes and screaming steel. Bullets punched into muscle and bone, but the beasts kept coming, moving faster than anything that big should be able to move. Dirt, blood, and fur filled the air. One launched itself at a deputy. It never finished the leap. Gunfire shredded it mid-air and it hit the ground hard, twitching. Its scream cut short as we kept firing until it stopped moving. Another broke through. It grabbed a deputy by the throat and lifted him like he weighed nothing. His boots kicked once, twice. Then the creature shook him violently. There was a sickening snap, the sound of something breaking that should never break. The beast hurled him into a tree. His body hit with a wet thud and slid down the bark, lifeless before it touched the ground. No one screamed. No one could. We kept firing. The fight lasted 3 minutes. 3 minutes of nonstop gunfire, howls, and dying roars echoing across a farm that should have been waking up to birds and sunrise. When it ended, the silence was worse than the noise. Smoke drifted over the field. Spent casings crunched under our boots. The creatures lay torn apart in the grass, massive bodies finally still, 6 dead. One of ours didn't get up. The silence came down hard. Not peace, not relief, just the sudden absence of noise where screaming had been. Smoke hung low over the field, drifting in pale ribbons through the early morning air. The sun crested the horizon, washing everything in a soft orange light that felt wrong, too gentle for what lay scattered across the grass. No one spoke. Rifles stayed shouldered long after the last body stopped moving. Fingers trembled on triggers. Someone kept sweeping the tree line, again and again, convinced the dead hour might still have teeth. Spent casings crunched under our boots when we finally moved. That sound, small, sharp, made everyone flinch. Up close, the creatures were worse. 8 feet of ruined muscle and black fur, yellow eyes already glazing over. Bullet wounds tore through them, but even dead they felt wrong. Too solid, too heavy, like they didn't belong to the world we stood in. One twitched when the wind shifted, and a deputy nearly fired again before realizing it was just nerves. Then someone saw him. The deputy who'd been ragdolled. His body lay crumpled at the base of the tree, twisted in a way the human body isn't meant to twist. Bark was smeared dark where he'd struck. Blood soaked into the grass and streaked the trunk like the tree had tried and failed to catch him. No one rushed forward. We stood there staring, frozen, witnesses to something no training prepared us for. Someone whispered his name. It sounded small, breakable. Vargas knelt first, slow, careful. like the ground itself might betray her. She reached out, hesitated, then forced her hand onto his shoulder. Cold. She recoiled as if burned and stared at her fingers, breathing shallow, eyes unfocused. A deputy nearby dropped to a knee and vomited. Another sat down hard, helmet rolling away, and stared straight ahead like he'd unplugged from the world. I tried to reload my rifle and couldn't seat the magazine. My hands felt thick, numb, foreign. I realized I was still squeezing the trigger on an empty chamber. Click, click, click. Someone gently pushed my hand down. We bagged our dead first. The zipper on the body bag sounded impossibly loud in the morning air. Final. When we lifted him, no one spoke. No prayers, no words. Just the quiet understanding that whatever we'd walked into here had taken one of us and would never give him back. Then came the creatures. No one wanted them moved. No one wanted them studied. The decision was unspoken but unanimous. We burned them. Gasoline soaked into fur and muscle, flames climbing fast, black smoke boiling into the brightening sky. The smell was thick, oily, wrong, something that didn't smell like flesh should. We stood back and watched until there was nothing left but scorched ground and ash blowing across the field. The farm was waking up around us. Birds began to call. A breeze moved through the grass. Somewhere in the distance, a truck passed on a road that had no idea what had happened here. It felt obscene. When it was finally over, when the bodies were gone, the fire reduced to embers, and the sun fully up, the field almost looked normal again. Almost, but none of us were. Standing there in the daylight, blood drying on our boots, a body bag loaded into the back of a vehicle behind us. We all swore an oath that morning, not with raised hands or spoken vows, but with silence. No interviews, no speculation, no truth. Vargas wrote the report the way it had to be written. Clean, bloodless, acceptable, livestock attack, unknown predators. Officer lost in the line of duty, words arranged to make the impossible digestible. The Department of Natural Resources came a few days later. They walked the land slowly, too slowly, asked questions without expecting answers. They stared at the tree line longer than necessary. One of them told me, quietly, to keep my livestock close. Another suggested higher fencing. None of them said what they thought we were dealing with. They didn't find anything, just scorched soil, torn earth, and warnings that weren't written down. Long pauses. Looks exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching. The kind of concern that burrows into your head and never leaves. Marisol and I started seeing each other not long after. It wasn't romance at first. It was shared trauma. Silence that didn't need explaining. Long nights sitting awake in the dark, listening for sounds that never came, or worse, might. We understood each other because we both carried the same weight. The farm became my obsession. 10-foot fencing, thicker steel, industrial-grade electric current humming through the night. Cameras watching every inch of land. Motion sensors buried like tripwires. Backup power. Backups. I turned the place into a cage. For a while, it worked. But fear doesn't fade. It calcifies. I couldn't let it go. I researched, dug into folklore, old case files, stories buried under ridicule and denials, names whispered and laughed off. Dogmen. Here's something I wish I'd never learned. Wolf packs don't stop at 6 or 8. They can number 15, sometimes more. Family units, coordinated, patient. We only killed 8. That number haunted me. It sat in my chest like a lodged bullet, every breath a reminder that something had been left unfinished. The fence went down just after dusk one evening. Not cut, not sabotaged. A tree had been pushed into it, crashing down, snapping the wires like cheap toys. No storm, no wind, just force. Marisol went to check it. Then she screamed. That sound, raw, panicked, cut through me in a way nothing ever had. I ran without thinking. I never saw what hit me. I only felt it, like being struck by a freight train at full speed. The ground vanished, my lungs emptied. The world spun into noise and color and pain. I tried to breathe and couldn't, tried to move and failed. When my vision finally cleared, I was staring up at the sky. 3 of them stood over me. They didn't rush, they didn't snarl. They watched. Yellow eyes glowing in the dark. Familiar silhouettes. Massive. Calm. Patient in a way that froze my blood. Drool slid from open jaws and soaked into the dirt beside my face. That's when I understood. This wasn't an attack. It was payback. They waited, watched me rebuild. Let me raise fences and wire and electricity like a challenge. Let me feel safe. Let me believe money could buy protection. Winning the lottery changed my life. New start, new outlook, new woman. It also gave me arrogance. Lying there broken, breath tearing out of me, staring into those unblinking yellow eyes, I finally understood. I hadn't defended myself. I declared war on nature. And nature doesn't fight wars. It ends them. And that brings us to the end of tonight's nightmare. I want to sincerely thank each and every one of you for tuning in to Obsidian Quill Publishing. Nightmares. Your time, your support, and your willingness to step into the dark with me means more than you know. Stay tuned for 2026. New stories, new nightmares, and horrors that go even deeper. If you haven't already, be sure to check out The Hunt for Dogman, Part 1 and Part 2, and my newest story, Blood in Brooklyn. All links are waiting for you in the comments below. And if you want to wear the fear, Obsidian Quill Publishing merchandise is now on sale. Every purchase helps support the channel and keeps these stories coming. Please like, subscribe, share, and help this channel grow. Your support keeps the lights on and the nightmares alive. Thank you for listening. And remember, some stories don't end when the video does.